The wind cut through the valley like a blade, carrying the sharp scent of oil and gunmetal. Dust swirled around the training yard as recruits lined up for rifle drills. Amid the noise of laughter and cursing, a young girl stood at the edge of the range, her hands too steady, her eyes too calm. 18-year-old Alara Vance had been on base for only 2 weeks, and already the soldiers had a name for her: Radio Girl. She wasn't meant to be holding a rifle. Her job was simple: maintain the comms, fix signal lines, and keep the command net alive. That was all. But every afternoon, when her duties were done, she stayed behind on the firing line. Not talking, not explaining, just watching, learning, and practicing. "Hey, Radio Girl," a corporal called one evening, smirking as he watched her adjust the sniper rifle's scope. "You know which end that bullet comes out of?" Laughter rippled through the squad. Alara didn't answer. She just tightened her grip, took a slow breath, and lined up her sights again. Behind her, Sergeant Major Dax, a towering figure with a scar over his temple, folded his arms. "Vance," he said, his tone rough but not unkind. "This isn't your lane. You're here for radios, not rifles. Understood?" "Yes, sir," she replied, lowering the weapon. But as he walked away, he didn't see the flicker in her eyes, a quiet defiance, buried deep under obedience. That night, while others shared stories and drinks around the barracks fire, Alara sat alone under the floodlights, disassembling a damaged scope she'd found in the junk pile. Her hands moved with the confidence of someone who'd done it 100 times before. When the base armorer passed by, he stopped, watching her work. "Who taught you to do that?" She looked up briefly. "My father," she said simply. He nodded. "He must have been one hell of a teacher." Her gaze drifted toward the rifle range in the distance. "He was," she murmured. "Until he wasn't. No one knew much about her past. They didn't know that her father, Captain Adrian Vance, had been one of the most decorated snipers of the previous war. A man whose final shot had saved an entire convoy, but cost him his life. Alara had grown up with his lessons etched into her bones. The rifle doesn't care who you are. It only listens to patience. Still, in a base full of hardened soldiers, patience was the one thing no one had for her. When she passed through the mess hall, conversations paused. Some pitied her, others sneered. 18 and she thinks she's one of us, someone whispered. Probably here because of her last name. Alara pretended not to hear. She'd learned long ago that silence could be armor too. The next morning, as the sun rose over the jagged hills, she stood at the comms tower, headset on, listening to the static hum of open frequencies. Nothing unusual, routine, boring. But something in the air felt wrong. From the north, faint echoes rolled across the valley, not thunder, not wind. The low, rhythmic thump of distant artillery. She froze. "Command, this is Tower 1, she said quickly. "I've got movement, possibly armored columns approaching from..." The rest of her transmission vanished under a single, deafening blast that shook the ground. Dust, fire, screams. The base was under attack. And before the next hour passed, Radio Girl would hold the weapon that would silence the battlefield and make history remember her name. The second explosion tore through the motor pool, sending a wall of fire spiraling into the sky. Alara was thrown from the comms tower, hitting the dirt hard enough to knock the wind out of her lungs. All around her, the calm routine of morning had erupted into chaos. Alarms blaring, soldiers shouting orders, dust and smoke clouding the horizon. "Get to cover." "Move!" a sergeant's voice bellowed through the haze. Alara stumbled to her feet, blood running from a cut on her forehead. She grabbed her headset from the ground. Dead signal. The antenna array had been blown apart. Without it, command couldn't coordinate anything. "Dax!" she shouted over the roar. "The comms are down." Sergeant Major Dax sprinted past, rifle in hand. "Forget the comms. We've got hostiles in the ridgeline." Then she heard it. The sharp, clean crack of a sniper rifle. One shot. Then another. Every soldier who moved into the open dropped instantly. Whoever was firing was a professional. Alara dove behind a concrete barrier, heart hammering. From her position, she could see the ridge. faint flashes glinting off a rocky ledge nearly 2 kilometers away. She tapped the headset again. Still dead. The command tent was gone. Smoke and fire rolled across the camp, turning the morning into a battlefield nightmare. Dax slid down beside her, breathing hard. We can't push forward. He's picking us off one by one. Can't we call for air support? He shook his head. They've jammed us. Comms are useless. His voice dropped, grim. We're sitting ducks. Alara peered through the haze. The enemy sniper was deliberate. One shot every 30 seconds, just enough to keep everyone pinned down. She could see bodies lying motionless near the vehicles. What about Marksman Holt? She asked. Dax's jaw tightened. He's gone. First hit took him clean through the scope. For a moment, no one moved. The sound of gunfire echoed across the valley like a metronome of death. Then Alara noticed something. A glint on the observation tower. Holt's sniper rifle, still propped on the railing, untouched. She stared at it for a heartbeat too long. Dax followed her gaze. Don't even think about it. I can see the flashes, she said quietly. I can find him. Vance, you're a comms tech, not a sniper. Her eyes met his, calm, steady, and burning with something he couldn't name. My father taught me to shoot before I could drive, sir. If I don't try, everyone out there dies waiting. A pause. The gun cracked again, splintering the wall beside them. Dax cursed under his breath. You'll never make it up there alive. I'll crawl if I have to. Before he could stop her, Alara bolted from cover, sprinting low through smoke and debris. Bullets sliced the air around her as she dove behind a burned-out Humvee, then slid into the tower's base. Her pulse thundered in her ears, but her hands didn't shake. Step by step, she climbed the narrow ladder, each rung vibrating with the distant impact of explosions. The higher she went, the quieter the chaos below became, until all she could hear was the whisper of the wind. At the top, she found the rifle, a long-range .338 Lapua, still warm from the sun, still zeroed in. Beside it lay Holt's dog tags, half buried in dust. Alara's breath caught. She touched them gently, then pressed them into her vest. I'll finish it, she whispered. Below her, the base was burning. Soldiers were trapped, pinned, waiting, and up on that tower, a young girl no one had believed in set her sights on an unseen killer, nearly 2 kilometers away of the first step, toward the shot that would rewrite history. The tower creaked, under her weight as Alara lay flat on the cold metal floor. The heavy sniper rifle balanced across her arms. Smoke drifted from the burning vehicles below, curling upward like black serpents. Every now and then, a round snapped past the tower's edge, the enemy sniper trying to find her position. She took a slow breath, then another. Her heartbeat steadied. Her father's voice came back to her, low, calm, precise. The shot starts long before you pull the trigger. Breathe with the wind. Let it tell you when it's ready. Alara extended the bipod, nestled the rifle into her shoulder, and opened the scope. Through the magnified glass, the world sharpened, rocks, shadows, heat distortion. The ridge was nearly 2 kilometers away, a perfect sniper's nest, high ground, natural cover, and enough distance to make counterfire nearly impossible. She scanned left to right, methodically, until she caught the faintest flicker, sunlight bouncing off a lens. There you are, she whispered. Her fingers moved automatically. Windage, elevation, rangefinder. The digital readout flickered, 392 meters. She exhaled slowly. It was beyond regulation range, nearly impossible for a first shot. But the alternative was worse, doing nothing while her brothers-in-arms died below. Below the tower, Sergeant Major Dax shouted orders trying to regroup survivors. He had no idea she was already in position. Alara focused again. The enemy sniper had set up under a camo tarp between 2 boulders, motionless. Even at this distance, she could see the faint glint of his rifle barrel. He was waiting for movement. So was she. The wind shifted, brushing strands of her hair across her cheek. She adjusted 1/2 mil left. Her breath slowed. 1, 2, 3. Patience, her father's voice echoed again. Your first mistake is rushing a perfect shot. She didn't rush. Through the crosshairs, she saw a shadow move beside the enemy sniper, an officer leaning over, gesturing, giving orders. The kind of man whose voice could command entire units, the kind of man whose death could stop an attack cold. Alara's pulse quickened. Her mind screamed at her that it was madness, that no one hit a moving commander from 2.5 kilometers away. But her instincts and her training didn't care. She adjusted her aim slightly higher, compensating for drop in wind. The scope's reticle settled just where the officer's chest met the collar of his uniform. Down below, another explosion shook the ground. Dax yelled something. She couldn't hear him anymore. The world had narrowed to a circle of glass and crosshairs. Alara inhaled deeply. "Hold." The officer turned, shouting something at his men. For one frozen second, the glint of his binoculars reflected the sun, a perfect mark. Alara squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked back hard against her shoulder. The shot cracked like thunder rolling through the valley. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then, through the scope, she saw the officer collapse backward, motionless. The sniper beside him froze, confused. 2 seconds later, a second round from her rifle found him too. The ridge went silent. Alara lowered her weapon, her hands trembling only after it was done. Smoke still curled from the barrel, the echo of her shot fading into the distance. Below her, Dax looked up, squinting at the ridge. He saw the sudden stillness. Then his radio crackled to life. Faint, broken, but working again. Sniper's nest neutralized. Repeat enemy fire ceased. Alara leaned back, breath shaking. 1 bullet, 2 kills. The base, and everyone in it, still alive. For the first time since she arrived, no one was laughing anymore. Smoke still hung over the base when Alara climbed down from the tower. Her boots hit the dirt, knees weak, ears ringing from the recoil and chaos above. Soldiers stared as she walked past, covered in dust, rifle slung across her back like a relic from a legend they hadn't realized was being written. Who the hell fired that? Someone shouted. Sergeant Major Dax turned, eyes narrowing as he saw her step out from the tower's shadow. For a long second he just stared, unable to believe it. You? Alara didn't answer. She simply handed him Holt's dog tags. Dax looked from the tags to her face, then back toward the ridge. His voice was barely a whisper. That was over 2 clicks out. Before anyone could speak, a young medic ran up, breathless. Sir, we just intercepted comms from the enemy. They're scattering. They lost command control. The soldiers around them exchanged stunned looks. A murmur spread, disbelief giving way to awe. Was that her? Radio girl did that? No damn way. Alara brushed soot from her sleeve and glanced toward the horizon. They'll regroup, she said quietly. They always do. Dax followed her gaze. You think this isn't over? She shook her head. That wasn't their main force. That was just the forward spotters. And she was right. Minutes later, the eastern watchtower reported new movement. Vehicles advancing from the tree line, slow and deliberate. Through binoculars, Dax saw armored trucks and ground troops, a full assault unit. Everyone back to defensive positions. He barked, Mortars, get ready. Alara's voice cut through the chaos. Sir, if they make it past that ridge, we won't hold. You need to stop their command vehicle. Dax turned to her sharply. That's 3 kilometers out, maybe more. You can't even see it with the naked eye. She met his gaze, calm, unflinching. I can with a scope. For a second, no one spoke. The sound of engines rumbled in the distance, deep and rhythmic, like thunder rolling closer. Dax exhaled slowly. You just pulled off a miracle shot, Vance. Don't push your luck. She gave a faint, steady smile. Luck had nothing to do with it. He hesitated, then handed her back the rifle. Do it. Alara nodded once and ran back to the tower. Her hands moved automatically, reloading, recalibrating, adjusting the scope. This time the target was even farther, a moving convoy weaving through dust and heat waves, nearly invisible to the eye. She steadied her breath. The world narrowed again. Just her, the rifle, and the endless horizon. Through the scope she found it, the lead vehicle. Inside, through layers of haze, She caught the faint reflection of sunlight on glass, the windshield of the command truck. Distance, 3,047 meters. Wind speed, 12 mph crosswind. West to east, impossible. Alara adjusted 3 clicks left, 1 up. Her pulse slowed until it matched the rhythm of her breath. It's not the distance that matters. Her father's voice echoed again. It's belief. Distance only scares those who don't trust their own hands. She trusted hers. She squeezed the trigger. The recoil slammed into her shoulder again, but she didn't look away. Through the scope, the convoy blurred for a moment, then one vehicle erupted in a burst of flame and black smoke. Direct hit, someone screamed from below. She hit it! She hit it! Dax stared through his binoculars, disbelief melting into raw admiration. The impossible shot had landed. The command vehicle destroyed. The assault halted. Alara lowered the rifle slowly, eyes distant. Her hands trembled not from fear, but from the weight of what she'd just done. For the first time, Dax saluted her. "Radio girl," he said softly, voice hoarse. "Welcome to the front line." The battlefield lay silent now. No gunfire, no shouting, only the hiss of burning metal and the whisper of wind through wreckage. The air reeked of smoke, oil, and victory bought at a heavy price. Alara stood at the edge of the camp, her uniform torn, soot streaked across her face. The rifle hung from her shoulder, still hot from the shot that had ended the siege. Around her, medics moved between the wounded, and soldiers gathered in hushed clusters, still processing what they'd witnessed. For a long time, no one spoke to her. They just stared. Then Sergeant Major Dax approached, helmet under his arm, his voice low but steady. 3,000 meters, he said quietly. No one's ever done that in a live engagement. Not like that. Alara looked down at her hands, still trembling faintly. "I wasn't trying to make history," she murmured. "I just didn't want anyone else to die." Dax nodded slowly. "History doesn't ask what you wanted. It just remembers what you did." She didn't answer. Her eyes drifted toward the horizon, where black smoke still rose from the convoy she'd destroyed. Each plume marked lives lost, choices made. Even victory carried ghosts. A sudden roar of engines drew their attention. 2 helicopters descended over the base, whipping up dust storms as they landed. The insignia on their sides gleamed under the sun. Joint Command. Out stepped General Rourke, the theater commander himself, a man so rarely seen in person that his presence made every soldier straighten instinctively. Dax saluted. "Sir, we've secured the perimeter. Casualties contained. Enemy retreat confirmed." Rourke didn't respond immediately, his gaze fixed on the tower, and on the young woman standing beside it. "Who took that shot?" Dax hesitated, then turned slightly toward Alara. "She did, sir." The general's brow furrowed. "Her?" Alara stood still, her expression unreadable. "Yes, sir." He walked closer, his boots crunching over gravel. "You're the comms technician, correct?" "Yes, sir. Private Alara Vance." Something flickered across his eyes. Recognition. "Vance, as in Captain Adrian Vance?" Her voice softened. "He was my father, sir." The general nodded once, slowly. "He saved my convoy 5 years ago. One shot, 2,000 meters. We called it the impossible hit." He paused, looking at her rifle. Seems his daughter just broke his record. The surrounding soldiers exchanged looks, disbelief turning to awe. General Rourke stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You realize what that means, Private? The shot you took didn't just save this base. You neutralized a forward command unit that was coordinating assaults across 3 sectors. You may have just turned this entire campaign." Alara blinked, silent. The weight of his words didn't feel real. "I just aimed where I had to," she whispered. Rourke studied her for a long moment, then said softly, "Courage doesn't ask for permission." He turned to Dax. "Get her name in the report." Full commendation. Then to Alara. "You're being reassigned. Sniper Division. Effective immediately." Her heart skipped. "Sir, you've earned it," he said simply. "And the world deserves to know what you did here today." As he walked away, Dax gave a rare smile. Guess you're not just radio girl anymore. Alara looked at the rifle in her hands, her father's teachings echoing like ghosts between each heartbeat. One shot can save lives, or change the course of history. For the first time, she understood what he meant. 3 days later, the base was unrecognizable. The fires were out, the wounded evacuated, and the once chaotic valley was quiet again, eerily calm, as if the earth itself was catching its breath after witnessing what had happened. Alara stood on the observation tower at sunrise, the same one she had nearly died on. The rifle rested beside her, cleaned, oiled, and gleaming under the soft morning light. The breeze was cold but peaceful. Down below, soldiers moved through the camp, rebuilding, repairing, remembering. Every now and then, someone glanced up toward the tower and nodded with quiet respect. No one called her radio girl anymore. They had another name for her now. Ghost shot. Word of her impossible shot spread faster than anyone expected. First, it was whispers among infantry units. Then it appeared in encrypted command reports. Within a week, it reached global military channels. An 18-year-old communication tech who had pulled off a record-breaking, war-changing shot. Some said it was luck. Others said it was divine. But those who'd seen it, who'd heard that single gunshot cut through the chaos, knew better. In the command tent, Sergeant Major Dax approached her with a sealed envelope. "Orders," he said, handing it over. "Straight from HQ." She tore it open carefully. Inside was a letter embossed with the military seal, Sniper Division Induction, and below it, a single line handwritten in ink. "Your father once changed the tide of battle. You've done the same. Welcome to the Vance legacy. General Rourke." For a moment, Alara couldn't breathe. She traced the letters with her thumb, the words heavy with meaning she hadn't realized she'd been waiting for her whole life. Dax smiled faintly. "Looks like you've got a new call sign, too." "Ghost shot?" she asked. He chuckled. "You earned it. Enemy intel says your bullet came out of nowhere. 1 second they had command, the next they were gone. No trace, no sound, just a ghost." Alara looked back out at the horizon. The same ridge where she had made the shot still stood in the distance, silent, scarred, but unchanged. "It wasn't just me," she said quietly. "They were all counting on someone to act." Dax nodded. "And you did." Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, a message came through the restored comms line, a transmission from the capital. A journalist wanted to confirm the story. "Is it true an 18-year-old girl turned the tide of the siege?" The operator looked to Dax. "What should I tell them?" Dax hesitated, then glanced at Alara, sitting by the tower, quietly cleaning the rifle that had changed everything. He smiled. "Tell them the truth," he said. "Tell them a bullet doesn't care who fires it, only that it hits its mark." Weeks later, Alara Vance stood in front of an honor guard, the youngest sniper ever to receive the Cross of Valor. Cameras flashed. The world finally saw her face, not as a technician, not as a soldier's daughter, but as the girl who refused to stay in the background. When they asked her how she did it, she said softly, "My father taught me that patience is louder than fear. I just listened. The world listened too. From that day on." The name Alara Ghost Shot Vance was etched into military history, not as a myth, not as a miracle, but as proof that courage has no age, no rank, and no limits.